Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and we are continuing to count down our top 100 favorite board games of all time, and today is the 30s. Let's do it. My number 40 is Terra Mystica. And Terra Mystica is a game that maybe would be higher if it wasn't 4-player only, and we just don't have we don't play a lot of 4-player games. But this is a terrific one, and Terra Mystica looks very classic Euro, and it kind of is. It's these wooden buildings, you're putting them out, but it's got this really cool system of, as you take buildings off of your board and put them out into the world, you are changing your economy. So there's some of the buildings are going to give you money, some of the buildings are going to give you workers, some of the buildings are going to give you like cultists that move up this cult track and get you points and stuff. And on top of that, there's also this thing where as you build next to people, you give them stuff. So you don't want to build next to people, but you do want to build next to people because it makes it cheaper for you to build next to people. And there's just kind of a whole fight over different land. But it really is a 4-player game, so we don't get to play it as much as I'd like to, but I like it every time we play it, and it is my number 40.
My number 40 is Clank Legacy, and so I love the Clank system as a whole, but I am going with Legacy because it is my favorite version, and we loved playing it. And this is one of the few Legacy games that you can actually keep playing after you're done the campaign, which is great. At the end, you have like one double-sided board, making 2 boards.
That is good Clank math.
Yes, that you can play on, and you've got your deck and you've got your custom cards and stuff. But the campaign itself was great. It was kind of funny, especially for board game standards, just kind of short little writing bits. And Clank is very much a competitive game because you're going down to the dungeon, you're trying to grab as much stuff as you can and sneak out and hope your opponent doesn't get out. But in the Legacy version, it almost becomes like a semi-cooperative game because you're trying to like fulfill these quests. So there's a bit of negotiation of, ooh, if you go try and complete this quest, I'll stay in the dungeon.
And we stuck to our deals the whole time, which I was shocked by.
Yeah, so I was surprised at how well it played at 2 players, and it is my number 40.
My number 39 is Baron Park, and Baron Park actually used to be like a top 10 game for me, and I love Baron Park. And Baron Park's kind of here because this was our first, I think, comfort game, but it's gotten a little replaced by some other comfort games. We don't play it as much as we used to. I still love it, which is why it is my number 39, but it just doesn't get the same love that it once did. But Baron Park is, if you don't know Baron Park, it is like the tile placementiest of tile placement games because you're placing out tiles and that's just going to get you more tiles. And then you're going to place those tiles. And sometimes those tiles are going to get you a big tile that you can place tiles on. And then once you've filled all of your tiles with tiles, then you're done the game. And it's got a really great theme of German bear parks.
Yeah, including koala bears.
Yes, which aren't really a bear, I know. And it certainly hasn't hurt because it just continues to do well. And it continues to be a game that has a place in my heart and on this list, and it is my 39.
My number 39 is Res Arcana, and in Res Arcana, you are Alchemist, and what you're doing is at the very beginning of the game, you get dealt 8 cards, and only 8 cards. The rest of them go away, they go back into the box, you don't see them again. And you're trying to build an engine with those 8 cards. And so you're mixing different resources, you're getting resources, you're spending resources to turn them into different things. And amazingly, no matter what 8 cards you get, you can make it work. You can build a winning engine, and it has so much more replayability than I thought at first, because I thought, oh, 8 cards, like that seems like nothing. But it's the more we've played it, the more we're just like, ooh, like this time I can maybe work with like the demons or the dragons, or like there's lots of little strategies just depending on what starting cards you have. And that makes it my number 39.
My number 38 is Star Wars Rebellion, and this is one that we only play like once a year because it is a big game. It takes a lot of doing. It takes a lot of remembering the rules because we always have to kind of relearn it, but it is so worth it because this is just so Star Wars. There's a lot of games out there where the IP feels a little bit plonked on. You can kind of switch it out. Absolutely not with this game. This is like Star Wars built from the ground up, and it feels so different to when you are the rebellion or when you're the Empire. Because if you're the rebellion, you're ducking and weaving, you're just trying to hide out, and you're just trying to stretch things out for long enough that I guess the galaxy kind of sees the righteousness of your cause. Whereas if you're the Imperials, you've got tons of ships to start the game with, and you're just trying to find the rebel base and blow it up. And so you're playing so different. It's so like cat and mouse, but it's so specifically Star Wars cat and mouse. And there's this terrific system too of action selection where you're putting out like your generals and like all of the characters you'd expect from the movies. And they all have these awesome little standees. And that's how you're moving your ships and you're fighting and you're sneaking and you're doing diplomacy and all sorts of Star Wars stuff, and the expansion makes the fighting a little bit smoother and a little bit better, and adds Rogue One characters, which I love, and so that is my 38.
My number 38 is Botanic, which is a 2-player only tile placement game, and you are trying to build a pipe system to connect flowers, which are your points. But the neat thing is, when you get a tile, you don't just add it to your pipes. Instead, there's an extra step where you have to put it on a share board, either in the middle row or on your row. If a tile gets added to the middle and it doesn't match the tiles on either side, those get released. So you might get to add a tile on your opponent's turn, it might be on your turn. Ideally, you're releasing your tiles and only you are getting a tile, but you could end up with tiles at inopportune times. So you've got to try and figure out how to then get the pipes to twist to be able to eventually connect everything. And we've been playing this a ton, and it is my number 38.
My number 37 is Downforce, and Downforce is kind of a racing game, kind of a betting game, mostly just a crazy mess and a super fun time. And so Downforce is this game where you start off with one or maybe two cars that are going to kind of be your cars. And then you get a bunch of cards that are going to drive those cars. And cards is very hard for a Canadian, but I'm going to do my best here. And so you've got your cards, and the cards have all these cars that are on them. And so the cars on your card, you have to start in the top car of the card, and then you go down the card and drive the cars. And you have to do all of them in order. And some of those cars, like I said, are yours, some are other people's. So other people's, you don't want to drive the best that you possibly can. Yours, you want to go as far as you can. But when you pass these betting lines, all of that might change because then you can bet on any car that belongs to anyone. And then you're invested in that too. And really, you're going to get kind of half your points from what you bet on and half your points from how your cars do. So you really want the other cars sometimes to win and your cars also to do pretty well. And so there's so much interesting strategy in the cards that you are playing to drive these cars, but also you're always invested because your cars are moving on every single person's turn. And we've got a whole bunch of different boards for this now. So there's 6 or something different boards, and some have animals and jumps and sharks and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's such a weird, fun time. Definitely play this at a convention if you have a chance to, because that's the perfect setting for it. And it is my 37.
My number 37 is Village, and Village takes place across a series of generations. You start off with your first generation and you are sending these workers out around the village. They're going to be making things, selling things, going on adventures. But often these things cost time. So there's this hourglass that moves around the clock. And once it crosses midnight, then one of those people has to die. So you have to pick one of them. And you're usually going to try and pick one so that it ends up in the town book so that they get remembered. And so you're managing your number of people you have, the generations of people you have, because you have to first kill all the generation ones before you're killing the number 2s, and where they're ending up. And I hadn't seen anything quite like this where you are losing workers but in a very specific order, and so that's influencing like where you're putting them out and how you're bringing them
in
back.
such a thematic way too. Like the theme in this is terrific.
Yeah, and we got the big box version, so that includes being able to have like weddings. It also, I really like how they have the port system as an alternative board to play. So because of various modules, you can mix up how you play the game too. And Village is my number 37.
My number 36 is Viticulture, and specifically Viticulture Tuscany Essential Edition, because it really does fix any of the stuff from the base game and especially makes it just so much more playable for 2 players because there are just more spaces. There's 4 seasons, there's just a lot more options, a lot more ways to do the stuff that you want to do. And what you want to do is make some wine. And it's really cool because you're kind of going through very like common sense steps of the system where you're getting grapes, you're aging grapes, you're making wine, you're aging wine, you're filling orders, you're sending off those orders. But in Tuscany, some people don't love this, that you can kind of play it a bit without doing all of the wine stuff, but I kind of like that. I like that you can go down these different paths and you have other ways to make points. So if somebody is doing one of those actions that you really need to do and it's filled up, you're not screwed. You're not like losing that whole turn. You can get cards that can do all sorts of different actions. You can be building up your buildings. You can be selling plots of land. You can do all sorts of different stuff. And I like that it's just a little bit more sandboxy. I like the common sense progression, but that little bit more flexibility, I think, in Tuscany makes it a better game. And it is my 36.
My 36 is Parade, and Parade is a card game, and it's an Alice in Wonderland themed card game, and it looks beautiful. So I think because of how nice it looks, it's really easy to convince people to play it with you. But how it plays is you always have to add a character to the end of the parade. And then depending on the color of the suit as well as the value, you might have to take other characters that are in the parade. And that's bad. You want to try and have like no cards because those are going to be worth points at the end, and it's golf rules, so the lowest score wins. But once you get some cards, you're motivated to get more of those cards because whoever has majority at the end gets to flip the cards, and they're worth 1 point each instead of the face value. So it is interesting that you're like, oh, I don't want any cards, I don't want any cards, and then you're like, ooh, I want all of these cards because I want them to each be worth 1 instead of like 9 and 10. And it's so fun. It's super easy to introduce to people, and it is my number 36.
My number 35 is Marvel United. And Marvel United is the biggest Kickstarter I think that we have bought. This came in like 8 different boxes or something crazy and like hundreds of different characters. And when I saw the new one that had other X-Men, so we have Marvel United X-Men is the one specifically that I'm talking about. And when we saw the new one that had more X-Men, I was like, oh, maybe I need those. And I'm like, no, they've tricked me. I never need more of this. I've got so much of this, but I really like what I've got. And so this is a fairly simple game. You've got your dude and you've got a few cards. Those cards are pretty simple. There's 3 different possible things that they do. Sometimes they do a mix. And you do whatever's on your card plus the card in front. And that's kind of where the teamwork comes in, because it's like, oh, I'm going to need to move. I'm going to need to punch. I'm going to need to get rid of this bad guy. You're trying to get rid of bad guys. You're trying to uncover cards and like thwart the bad guy's plan. And so the actual gameplay, super, super simple, but it's surprisingly tricky. And some of those bad guys as well, because they all have different stuff that they do. So Magneto's totally different than Mr. Sinister's, totally different than Mystique. And they're challenging as well. For what looks like it's going to be like a little kid's game, we've got like a 40% win rate, maybe more than that, maybe 60% win rate. But still, we're not winning this every time. And we're not dummies. We're definitely solid X-Men teammates here. But even win or lose, this is just, it's such a fun, such a quick game, and it is my 35.
My number 35 is Near and Far, and this is designed by Ryan Lockett, who also does the art. And Near and Far is my favorite game of his. I think out of not just his game, but almost like any game, it does the best job of feeling like you're going on an adventure. And I think part of that is because on your turn, you can choose to do town actions, which lets you like build up the members of your party, pick your traveling companion, which might be like a tortoise or a dodo, or you can go explore the map. And so on the map, you're like racing to like different points, putting down tents, and you're completing quests. But what makes those quests really interesting is if you're doing like the character campaign, and that lets you play through multiple games as the same character and shares a little story about those characters at each of those stops and feels like a choose your own adventure. And it is my number 35.
My number 34 is Cascadia. And Cascadia is just a beautiful kind of chill tile placement game. So you start with a tile that's got 3 tiles on it, and then you're going to add different landscape around the outside. But you're thinking about a few different things at once, because you want the landscape to match the landscape, because you want to build like a bunch of mountains that aren't split up by prairies and other stuff. But also you want to put out animals, because every time you draft a tile, you draft a tile and an animal. And you want to make sure you've got homes for all those animals, and you want to make sure that those animals are matching the like goals. So the goals have different ways that they have to be connected to each other. And so you've got all these different kind of little mini puzzles you're thinking of at the same time, but none of it's too brain breaking. So it all feels very, very chill. And it just reminds us both of home.
I'm from Vancouver, Shawn's from Calgary, and so we're from the Cascadia region.
So we just saw these animals like on a daily, maybe not a daily basis, but we've seen basically all of these animals out in the wild, so it feels a little like home. Kind of like this shirt. I'm wearing my Cascadia shirt, and Cascadia is my 34.
My number 34 is Meadow, and first of all, Meadow is beautiful. Each of the cards looks like its own individual painting. It's a nature-themed game where you are building a meadow. So you have a tableau of cards, and you are like putting them out in a way that ecologically makes sense. So first you have your ground, then you might have a tree, then you might have like a grub that lives on that tree, then you might have a bird that eats that grub, and it's getting taller and taller. And every time you play a card, you're covering the symbol of the card underneath, which then might limit what cards you can play. And how you get your cards is also an interesting drafting mechanic of placing like these arrows in these slots. So you're very limited in what cards you can actually take depending on what slots are available. I find it really chill, even though you may not be able to pull out the plan you're going for. I think because of the art, the expansion as well is lovely with this like kayak river that you're going down, and it is my number 34.
My number 33 is Forest Shuffle. So I'm back to back here with Wildlife and Wilderness. And Forest Shuffle is a much newer game. It's such a clever game. We said we weren't going to say clever because we said it too much in the other videos, but this is so clever that I've got to say it. And in Forest Shuffle, you are making a tableau, but the tableau is that you put down a tree, and then you put animals around that tree, and you put them on either side, you put them on the top or the bottom. And those are going to score in these different interesting ways. So you're going to have a whole bunch of like birds on the top, and then that's going to have this specific bird scoring. Or you can have a bunch of like salamanders and stuff on the bottom, and those are going to multiply points too. Or you can have like predators and prey that maybe go on the side of the trees. But all of those are kind of different different routes that you're going to go down. Every game is going to be super different. There are definitely ways that feel like they're better, but you're also competing with other people as you're drafting these cards. So you're not always going to get to do what you want to do. And so you're going to have to go down these different routes and find these different interesting scoring combinations. And it looks so pretty. It's so interesting to think about how am I going to combine the cards that I've got? What are the best available things? How am I going to take stuff that other people want as well? Because hate drafting is a big part of Mother Nature. And I think we all know that. And this is my 33.
My number 33 is Guild of Merchant Explorers, and this feels like a flip and write, but you aren't doing any writing. A card does get flipped and it has a terrain and you're putting these cubes down on the terrain. But what makes this game really interesting is each round you get to select like a special card, and each of those cards feels like game breaking. They're so powerful. You can like put down 5 cubes at once, and it can feel really rewarding, particularly by the last round. You're activating like your 3 special cards and one of them again. So by the final round, you're getting to put down so many cubes. And there's also like 4 maps that get included as well, and each of them do feel really different. And I think it's just like that dopamine rush that you get when it's like, ooh, I get to put down so many things, and it worked out just well to connect
this
it.
This game is like a dopamine machine.
Yeah, and it is my number 33.
My number 32 is Wonderland's War. Wonderland's War is a competitive bag builder that also has kind of a push your luck element. And it's such a weird mix of stuff. And the theme, first of all, I love the theme. I know this is our second Alice in Wonderland game on this list. I'm such a huge Alice in Wonderland fan. But this is everyone in Wonderland, including Alice, is fighting over Wonderland. You've got these little armies. And there's kind of 2 distinct parts to this game. So first, you're drafting cards. And whilst you do that, you're putting out your armies in different regions. Then you've got your bag and your bag building, and that's kind of how you're fighting in the different regions. And it's such an interesting, like, how that push your luck works, and how the, like, building up your bag and putting out stuff from your bag, and just all of that stuff it's just so different from any other game that is out there, and it's so pretty, and it's asymmetric factions, which we always love. And so that is my 32.
My number 32 is Fields of Arle, which is a 2-player only Uwe Rosenberg farming game. And I think this is, of all the Uwe Rosenberg games that are about farming I've played, the one that has like the...
It's a weirdly big category.
Yes, and I think this has the like least feeding restrictions, because you still have to do the feeding. It's just not like the core focus like you get in Caverna or Agricola, and I just like doing the farming stuff. So I like using more actions to like cut the wood or clear the peat off, or like get my animals, more animals, if you know what I mean. But you don't have to spend so many actions just making sure that you've got the food to feed people. And there are a ton of different worker places, so lots of different avenues that you can go down, but you still get in each other's way quite a bit. I think what I really like about this game is I tend to win it most often as well.
Most often, I've never won this game.
I think one of the tricks is like building buildings, but Shawn will stick to his animal husbandry, and it is my number 32.
My number 31 is Unmatched, and we talk a lot about asymmetric games and having a whole bunch of different characters to choose from. Nowhere is that more true than Unmatched. We have got, I don't even know how many, so we've got almost too many, but now it feels almost like not enough because of the Unmatched co-op expansion. So we already love playing head-to-head. We love that this works especially well as a 2-player game. But with a co-op, we can take all those characters and now work together to fight the bad guys. And I'm so excited for when they put out more bad guys. The first 2 are terrific, the Alien and the Mothman. And it is really fun to use some of those older characters too that don't seem to, like, that didn't seem that good to begin with, but now they're really interesting. But still, I also like playing the head-to-head way as well. But it's just great that now we've got like multiple ways to play with this giant sandbox of stuff that we've built up. And I cannot wait to get the Shakespeare ones. That is like, I'm so excited that Shakespeare exists. It's in the States now. Lots of people have it. I'm so jealous of all of you that have it already. It's coming to the UK soon. But Unmatched is my 31.
My number 31 is Architects of the West Kingdom. And you are architects. You're building a cathedral, you're building a ton of buildings. But there's this interesting capturing mechanic. So as you're collecting resources, you get the number of resources for the number of workers that you have at a space. But other players can go to a spot and collect up all of your workers from a space, keep them on their board, or send them to prison. So it has this interesting push your luck where you know that if you send another worker to that spot, you might be able to get a ton of resources, but there's a target on your back. You're basically telling the other person, I dare you, go to the spot and capture me. There's also a little bit of push your luck with some of the other elements too, because you have to place a worker whenever you build anything, and the game ends when that building track is full. So you can see the end coming as people are building more and more. So you have to debate how much time you've got left for everything you want to try and do. And there's this whole like good versus bad track that you're managing as well. So you might push your luck a bit there of being like, well, I'll go to the black market and I'll do some like nefarious deeds, but that's gonna lower like my reputation level too. So you're kind of managing all of that, and it is my number 31.
And that is it. That brings us all the way down to 31, which means next time we are counting down the 20s, and we are oh so close to number 1.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you played any of the games we talked about, and as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.